Hello, so welcome to another episode of the Self Study Show. We have a very special guest today. Her name is Cheryl, and she is a spiritual mentor and healer. So, Cheryl, welcome to the show. Please tell me some more.
Thanks so much for having me on, Ant. I'm excited to get into this conversation. So, yes, as you said, I'm a spiritual mentor and healer, and I work a lot with women, helping them turn their pain into power. And I'm really here for the woman who wants it all, the woman who wants the deep level of love within her partnership and also has a deep sense of purpose. Because for me, they all go hand in hand. There's no point in being in this perfect relationship and then well, for me, it can't be perfect because you're putting pressure on another person for your happiness. And I believe that we all came to this earth to feel that level of fulfillment within ourselves. And a lot of times we have to be willing to go to the pain to actually uncover the truth of who we really are and find that level of fulfillment within ourselves.
Yeah, awesome. So, I like what you're saying there, about the relationships because it starts with us, right?
Mm.
Our relationship with ourselves. Would that be accurate in what you're saying there?
Absolutely. Everything's just a mirror reflection of what's going on internally. So I myself, my journey into spirituality, into personal development started after the breakup of a toxic relationship. And it was like, while that person may have had narcissistic tendencies, it was like, how did I even get myself into that situation? I got myself into that situation from me wanting to outsource the love from somebody else. It was like me wanting validation from somebody else, me wanting to feel good enough, me wanting to feel love. And when you go, as familiar yourself with, I'm sure, is like when you uncover that love that's within yourself, it's just a bonus. It's a cherry on top when you find that from somebody else. And life is just mirroring those things back to you. So it's not possible for anybody else to love us or to give us that validation if we can't do that for ourselves.
And just sticking on the topic of relationships here, do you observe and do you come across people who often enter a relationship and then they want to try and mold that person in order to
Mm.
satisfy their own needs?
Yes, a bazillion percent. Because I mean, we can hear it and you see it all over the internet as well. And I'm coming from a woman's lens, and it's very much like I hear people saying men are this, men are that, there's no good men out there. And I'm sure you coming from the man, you might hear it from the other lens of like there's no good women out there. And it's just kind of like our beliefs are creating our reality. So it's like, what do you choose to believe? Do you choose to believe there's no good men or women out there? Or do you come back to this place in center and go, well, I'm a good person. So if life is always mirroring things back to me, I have to find that within myself in order to see it in another person. I believe, my belief is there's God in everyone and everything. So if we're showing up in a partnership and we're expecting a person, to do all the things like bring out the bins, do the dishes, all these things, all of those arguments are actually coming from a deeper core wounding within ourselves. Like I know for myself, it was like I might give out about that thing, but it's actually like they're not giving me attention, they're not giving me love. So we may go into this area of trying to be like, I want them to bring out the bins or do the housework or those things, but it's coming from deeper core wounding. And any of those times that we're trying to mold somebody else, it's a deeper thing within ourselves. The person or partnership or romantic relationships is the biggest mirror. Like when you have that soulmate connection with somebody, it's the biggest mirror. It's the biggest trigger that you're going to have within your life because somebody is mirroring something back to you.
Yeah, so everything is a mirror, isn't it? Often the things we complain about, if we look closely enough, it's usually we're talking about ourselves in some way, aren't we?
Yeah, completely. And it
Again,
puts so much, sorry.
so you go, you go.
It puts so much pressure on a relationship to actually expect that other person to change for you. And I see this happen, and you probably see it as well in the personal development space. There is that fear. If I do all this work on myself and the other person doesn't do any work on themselves, where's it going to be? And you always have to trust that. And this is what I teach people as well, or express to people. You have to trust that your path is your path and you can't be held down or weighed down by somebody else wondering whether they're going to show up and do the work on themselves. Your path is your path. When you show up and do the work on yourself, it will be reflected back to you.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And yeah, because I always go off the impression that our one job in life is to be the best me I can be, just talking about myself. And a lot of people will say, well, that's a selfish way to look at things. But actually, if you really think about that, if I'm the best me I can be, then how good a husband am I going to be? How good a friend, how good a father am I going to be? So rather than focus on the other person and have those fears, like you say, yeah, I'm growing, this person, is not into personal growth because you don't need to be. Yeah, I can see where some people have left relationships because of that. And again, it's almost like that person in the personal growth stage is also then trying to mold the other person, right? Even though
Yeah.
they probably have a little bit more self-awareness, but then they're still doing like the same thing, you know?
Well, we can be quite snobbish, can't we, when we get into this world of personal development? I'm doing it, they're not doing the work. And it's the thing, like it's known in the spiritual world as the spiritual ego, is like coming in saying, I'm full of love and light, and they're the one that's bringing this drama into my life. It's all their fault. And that's not the truth of it all. And it really, like the point that you're bringing there, it's really the classic thing of putting on your own air mask first in an airplane if something was to happen, because it's like I know myself. And I think everybody can admit that when we're tired or we're feeling jaded, we get snappy. That's when we're very much like at that point that like I can't serve anybody else if I am not feeling full within myself. It's just not possible. So we have to be selfish. And in a way that we're conditioned, and particularly for those people that have like resonate with being an empath, we're so used to showing up and people pleasing. And people pleasing, is it can be really selfish, because what we're actually doing when we're people pleasing is we're looking for a conditional type of love. We can show up in a partnership and be like, I made you dinner, I did this for you, I did that for you, but it's expecting something in return, but not actually vocalizing what you're wanting in return. It's like, I want to be seen, I want to be heard. And yes, you're doing the nice thing, cooking the dinner, doing whatever it is that you're doing, but there's conditions attached to it. And it's like, you have to be selfish to fill yourself up first and then come from a place of overflowing with the love that you are, because that's natural and innate within us. So when we're feeling like good and in full form, it doesn't have to be 100% battery life 100% of the time, but it's like when we're feeling that full within ourselves, it's a natural expression of who we are to want to pour that love onto people.
Because I have this expression that I use in my marketing. It's just to empower yourself through self-awareness. And what you're saying there about, I've done the cooking for you, therefore you should do this for me, or you should appreciate that. I'm thinking, I read a book, the Love Languages. You heard that book? Yeah.
Gary Chapman, is it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, by understanding my own love language, I was then able to spot it in, my wife, So therefore, if her love language is acts of service, for example, then, doing those household chores and that is, the love. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Rather than some people might do what's the other one? It's like gifts, isn't it?
Yeah, there's gifts, there's acts of service, there's words of affirmation, physical touch,
That's right. Yeah.
and quality time.
Quality time. Yeah. Whereas
Yeah.
my love language is quality time. So there, straight away, by having the self-awareness, then you can see your partners or your spouses, and then that gives you, the knowledge to know how to nurture that relationship. Would you say that's correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Like when I learned about this, it really changed. I've never read the book, but I've like learned about it, and I think it's amazing, because I think everybody should learn their love language and whoever their partner is, because a lot of times we can expect another person to show love in the exact same way, and that's just not how we're operating. Like you saying that you want quality time, and if somebody else's, I can't remember what you said your partner's is, if
Acts of
services,
service.
acts
Yeah,
of service. Like, so she could be giving you acts of service all day long, and you're like, she's not spending any time with me. And it's like this frustration that's happening. And it's like, And this is what saddens me sometimes is when I see relationships. I love reality TV shows for this reason because it's literally like I just see a bunch of inner children running around wanting to like get love or get validation, and the other person is showing up trying to do it, but it's just doing it in a different way. So it's so important to communicate what you want and what you need from somebody and for them to be able to do the same.
And these inner wounds that you're talking about, I agree with everything you're saying. I can see it. I just wanted to bring this point up. It might be a bit controversial, but it just comes to my mind. But I've heard a lot of ladies over the years say, "I like bad boys," and yet I've often said when they eventually break up, you like the bad boy until the bad boy was bad to you.
Mhm.
What do you
Yeah.
think of that?
Yeah, it's so true. It is so true.
Is that a case where bad boys are, excitable or whatever, and then there's that potential there to change that person and maybe mellow that bad boy down? Am I
Yeah,
taking
I
it
think
back there or?
Yeah, I think, I mean, there's so many different angles you can look at this in. I mean, I think from younger, when I see it in like teens or 20s, it is kind of like it is that excitement. And then I think it is natural to kind of almost want to like prove that you can change somebody. But I think it's coming from a place of wounding. Like you mentioned, it's coming from a place of, I want love and I want validation, and I'm gonna make it happen with this person. Um, and I think no matter what way you look at it, it's like where is that conditioning coming from? Where are you looking for that excitement from? Because a lot of times what the excitement is coming from is like an inconsistent childhood. So your inner child is finding that to be normal, that level of excitement when it's there within you. So it's kind of like it's not as if you're chasing out. I don't see it as people chasing thrills, but it's just what their nervous system knows to be normal. Doesn't mean that it's actually healthy for them, but it's like what we deem as normal for us, we tend to recreate those patterns over and over and over again. And I find that sometimes girls or women or ladies, as you referred to them so nicely as, they can sometimes know that they're going for the bad boys, but it's like they can't stop themselves. And I find that when people can't stop themselves, it's because there's this magnetic pull. And, with it could be a soulmate connection. And I like to see it that we've had so many soulmate connections because we've done lots of past lives, and therefore we have many soulmates. And I never like to, like, I'm the type of person, and I'm sure you are as well, and the clients that work with me are the type of people to use that to your advantage. If that person has been mirroring something back to you, what can you learn from that situation? What can you learn from it that to break that pattern? If you're consistently, because sometimes something can happen once and it's okay and it's a bit of fun. I've had clients before be like, "Oh my God, I went off with this man," and and I was like, "Well, that's not your pattern. You've done it one, like you've done, like go easy on yourself. Like that's fine. But it's if it's a pattern that life is keeps mirroring to you and keeps showing to you, that's when we need to dig into it, and that's when we need to look and actually see where the conditioning is coming from that you keep chasing that thrill."
Yeah, yeah, because it's always baffled me a little bit that one. Because yeah, I don't know if there's like a protector thing there as well, like the bad boy's bad to everyone, but he's nice to me type thing. I don't know if there's a bit of that going on, but yeah, it all obviously stems from finding out why you like these thrills, and yeah, it's all digging into it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I've heard people say, like, come to this realization, like, what's wrong with me? And I always say, well, that's the wrong question. It's better to ask what happened to me, because
Yeah.
something happened in the past enabled that is making you run all these, programs in the present. Where sometimes
Yeah.
I'm identifying with pain that's no longer occurring, and it's making our decisions and moving us into action.
Well, I think the word that really stood out there when you were speaking was protecting. And that's the thing. Sometimes we go for these partners that we know, maybe not consciously, but we know that it's not going to work out with because it can be so vulnerable to fully open your heart for somebody. So there's like an unconscious thing. What I typically see when I read people's energy is I can see their inner child, and their inner child might have their hand up above their heart space. I might find it even difficult to read their heart space because they've built up so many layers of protection. So it's like sometimes they will go unconsciously for the bad guy seeking this thrill, but it's like because they know something within them knows that they're not going to have to go too deep, too intimate with that person.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. So you say you help women. You're also a healer as well. So is that what you're saying there? You look at that heart space and you try and identify things. And are you trying to give your clients the awareness so they can figure out these things and put the puzzle together, sort of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. And just to go back, I loved your question there that you said about the wrong, because this is typically what I see so I do read energy, but I very much connect with people's soul, I connect with people's egos, I connect with people's inner children. And that is the number one thing that the inner child is concerned about, that they've done something wrong. They feel like they've done something wrong. It may be a case that they didn't get love or get validation from a parent or caregiver. And straight away, those barriers of protection keep coming up because they're blaming themselves. They're thinking they did something wrong. They're thinking there's something missing within them, which is the ego's biggest illusion, is that there's something missing within any of us. But typically, when I see somebody, yes, I can read their energy, I connect with their soul, and I see the pieces and parts of them themselves that are looking to be integrated. But I do bring people on journeys. My healing isn't like I will just do an energy healing. Yes, I can do that and I bring pieces of it into it, but it's more important for me to bring somebody on a journey so that they can see themselves. They can connect with their inner child. They can have a relationship with their inner child so that they know when they're in partnership and they have something and they react from a state of the inner child. Because when we react out of the state of our inner child, it activates the other person's inner child as well. So it's basically two 7-year-olds having an argument or a disagreement. You're not getting anywhere with that. So it's like teaching them to cultivate that relationship, teaching them to cultivate this part within themselves that's willing to look with it at the pain, willing to go to the shadows of everything that's come up for them. Because a lot of people want to shut down and not willing to go there. Almost like, and I was doing this for so long, I was in talk therapy for so long, I was doing things, but it was almost like flirting around the edges, like skirting around the edges or flirting with it, and not fully going in there, not going through the portal and actually owning my pain and feeling it within the body, because everything just wants to be felt within the body. So for me, it's the most important thing is to teach somebody to do it themselves so they're not having to be dependent on constantly going to a healer. So when we do this, when we're willing to connect with those parts of ourselves, what happens is when we get into stillness is it's not those parts that are activated as loud as us as they typically were. And we can actually connect to our intuition, the truth of who we are and who we came here to be. And that is like the most important thing, is really creating that spaciousness so that you can hear the truth from all of the noise that the ego projects.
That truth is powerful, isn't it? When you can bind it and lock into it, because that truth can trigger you. I've found from my own personal experiences, because my inner child's being triggered, right? Because it's saying you could do this, and but if you're triggering your inner child, then your inner child's like, no, we don't want to do that because it's scary.
Mm.
I like what you said there about the emotion, and if you argue with someone, I've always heard the expression, if you argue with an idiot, you just make two.
Yeah.
I think that's just said for marketing purposes and effect. But a better way to phrase that is when the emotion is high, the logic is very low. So I
Mm.
suppose now to look at this, when the emotion is high, the reason why the logic is low is because you've just sort of activated your inner child and you stepped into it. So your knowledge of life and your logic is pretty low. But because you've had this emotional connection to this experience from the past in your childhood, but your subconscious mind has then identified this present situation with that, you're acting on, as you were in the past in a child. Do you feel I'm on the right lines there?
Yeah, a million percent agree with everything that you say. Like the logic goes out the door and you're working from that emotional state. So what do we do when we're working from that emotional state? We either lash out at somebody else, or we either close off our heart space. We turn away from them. We turn away. And you can even like notice this when you're having conflict with anyone, a partner or anyone. It's like, where do you close off? Where does your body even want to hunch over? Because it's so important to open through those moments to keep your heart space open. It is okay if you react. We all react. We're all human. But it's like, how quick can you bring yourself back into that state of awareness to actually go, okay, I either need to take a pause, I either need to take a moment, or can I come into this moment now in full consciousness of full truth of actually, and this is what I find when when we're willing to do this work on ourselves and build this connection with our inner child, we can do it quicker and quicker and quicker. You can notice when, as soon as you step out of your truth frequency, you notice it. And it's not about being 100% perfect. It's about noticing it. And sometimes that person is mirroring it back to you really quickly because when you see them go there and like two backs against each other, it's like, no, how can we open through this moment? And how can we both address and acknowledge the pain that we're creating here, the suffering that we're creating here for both ourselves and the other person, and then come to it from a place of truth.
So would you say then the first step to changing this, if a person wants to change it, is simply becoming aware of it? As you say, you've got to notice it. You almost catch yourself doing it. If it's negative self-talk, the first thing is like, oh, I've said that again.
Yeah, absolutely. It can be that simple. And what I find here is the awareness is the beautiful moment. And then what happens is it's similar to like the intuition. When I have people that's saying to me that they're not intuitive, and I'm like, I read their energy and I'm like, no, you're very intuitive. You're getting the hits. But what happens straight away, like that awareness, it's like the ego comes in. The ego starts telling stories like you're a piece of shit for saying this. You're this. You're not good enough. You're blah blah blah. I can't believe you did this. All these stories compound on top of this the awareness that you have, so then you're automatically starting to trying to like fight with the ego, and it's like just ego fighting with ego. It's not truth. So when you create that awareness, it's like having compassion for yourself in the moment to know that like, yes, we're human, we can operate out of a state of consciousness that isn't our truth, but it doesn't mean it's bad or wrong. It's just like, okay, I get to address that. I get to sit with that within my body and hold compassion for myself and know and get to sit with it and get to go, okay, if that situation were to arise again, how would I show up differently? Who would I choose to be in that moment? And it's through that conscious awareness again and again and again. And our soul's journey is all about remembering the truth of who we are. So it's really, we forget and we come back. We forget and we come back. We forget and we come back. And it is. People can be like, oh, that's so exhausting. Yes, it can be exhausting, but it's so freeing because the moment that you remember, you're like, oh yes, oh, this is who I am. That's where it's coming from. I don't need to beat myself up. And I think when two people in a partnership are willing to show up and be accountable for the things that they do when they do operate out of a level of consciousness that may hurt the other person, it's like coming together to have that conversation of here's where I was operating. How can we do this better? How do you want me to show up? How do I want myself to show up? And I think it's like it's so beautiful when we're in these partnerships when people are willing to call you out on any times that you drop it and you can't see it yourself.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So do you do some limiting belief work as well within your
Yes.
client? Um, Again, and just going back to that inner child, how unaware of a lot of it's still in us, in different areas. I know when I've done my own limiting beliefs, and I still find them now, I have this journaling process to make sense of it, identify it, write it out into a phrase. And then I ask myself a series of questions. And every time I read it back, it just looks like a child. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's just like, this
absolutely.
isn't actually me. You know what I mean? And I write it down and I go, that's ridiculous. Like what I actually believe, because like consciously I don't believe it, but subconsciously I do because my
Yeah,
actions prove I do.
yeah.
So, and then when I write it down and I make sense, like, so I'll write a limiting belief down. The first question I'll ask is this belief 100% true? Every time it's like, no. Because and then I just look at it and I just go, yeah, this is like a child talking, all of this
Mm.
here. But I think it's very important to do that. And it's almost like talking to your inner child, isn't it? Giving them
Yeah,
the pep talk, basically, that their inner child didn't have during that time when they were a child.
Absolutely. It's giving them the spaciousness because what a lot of our inner children, the wounds that are coming up are limiting beliefs. If you look at any limiting belief, they can be traced back to like, I'm not lovable, I'm not worthy, or I'm not good enough. Like any limiting belief is stemming from that. And it's stemming from the illusion of the ego that we're in separation from source consciousness. So that feeling will have us like thinking that we're not lovable or not worthy, any of those things. But for me, it's like, yes, it's about bringing it down, allowing the inner child to have the spaciousness to express itself, to express its pain without speaking to it like the adult would speak to it by, you're grand, you're okay. That's not true. Because when we tell, you're like, it's like when you're looking at the thing and you're like, I know it's not true. I know it's not true, but there's something within your body feeling that it's true. And this is where somatics is such a big part of my work because this is where the recoding actually happens. When I'm working with any limiting belief, it's like, how can we get that out of the body? Whether that's doing something with the inner child and allowing the inner child to get it out of her body, or whether it's somatic practices through dance, through meditation, or through breath work. But so much of it is feeling it within the body first, then allowing it to go. That's a big part. And then the recoding process is next. So when we clear it out of the body, like either subconsciously or through a somatic practice, the next piece is that the knowing that the ego still tells you that same story because your neural pathway is programmed that way. It's playing the same record over and over again. So you may have such a profound shift, or a client may have a profound shift in a session with you and be like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. I've cleared it. But then, for the month afterwards, their ego's bringing up the same story over and over and over again. And this is why recoding is so powerful of actually just been like, that's not true. Once you've cleared it out of your body, you can go, that's not true. That's not true. That's not true. And reframing it in your mind. And sooner or later, like within a few days, a couple of weeks, it will click into place somatically. And it's like something opens up in your energetic field as well, where that truth starts being reflected back to you then.
And it really does. I know when I first learned limiting beliefs and I found one, but my problem at the time was I couldn't find the right people for my business. I thought I needed to learn management, leadership, recruitment, systems. I thought, so I was willing to admit that there was something I was missing. So I looked outside of me and I did all of that training and all of them subjects, got incremental gains. But then I came across limiting beliefs. And then I found a belief which is very common, which is people will always let me down.
Mm.
When I come across that, I thought, I bet that is at play here. So I worked with a coach, changed that through examining it, making sense of it. And then I changed it and recreated that belief to the right people will always be there to help and support me. And then do I believe that 100% true? Yeah, actually. So that one's got more truth than the limiting one. The moment I did that, within a couple of days, the wrong people in my business started handing in their resignation. They wanted to leave. And they weren't bad people, they just weren't right for my business. And I just knew it was because I had changed that limiting belief. Have you
Such an
had
amazing
any,
example.
have you had any stories like that? And yet, who would know that people will always let me down? A common belief that stems from family and relationships. Who'd know that as a business owner that would hold you back in building a great team? Like I
Mm.
wasn't aware of that, but it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
This is why I work a lot with my clients. I try to get through to them that because I'm a mindset coach for small business owners. I try and get through to them that your personal beliefs are holding your business back.
Yeah. Exactly. And it's funny because my eye is drawn to like what you have behind you, be the limitless you. And it's like, yes, when we place the limits on ourselves, it's us placing the limits on ourselves. And I suppose the biggest thing that's coming to my mind, I'm like going, is it actually a limiting belief? It probably is, yeah. When I went through that breakup that led me on this journey, I was feeling like I'm too old, I'm never going to meet anybody again, there's no good men out there. And it was literally when I started unpicking those beliefs, so there was a lot of beliefs to go through, but they were all the ones that stemmed from I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, and I'm not lovable. So when I started shifting them, and it was through a few years, but it actually wasn't when I literally, because I have a program on this of how to help people change their patterns in dating to attract a soul aligned person. But for me, this was literally my lived experience. I used to attract people with narcissistic tendencies. It was like, this is what like dating the same person with a different face is. Because people would come to me and it's like it's the same person over and over again. But when I started changing it, it was like, oh my God, these amazing men started coming into my life. It was like, oh my God, like this is working. And like it started being like really nice men. Oh no, there was a whole variation between then and now of the type of men I meet now. But it's like through breaking through those limiting beliefs of what I believed about men and what I believed about myself, things just magically, like it was literally, it's mind blowing the people that I've come across since. And for clients as well, I've literally seen them being like, oh my God, I just cannot believe the type of man that showed up, that the type of man that's just asking for my number, ask me straight out on a date. It's like, it changes everything. Your beliefs change everything. And it's like, I think the big thing is as you mentioned earlier, it's the awareness. It's coming up with that awareness of where are you limiting yourself, whether that's through business, through relationships. Like you said, it's your personal beliefs. So I typically work with women on both relationships and their purpose, like their soul aligned business. And it's like whether we look at it, whether it's a type of man coming into their life or their current partner, and you see rejection wounds there, it's playing out in business. If clients aren't signing up, you're feeling the rejection wounds. If you're not able to show up on social media, or you're not getting engagements, it's from rejection wounds. It's all the same things. It's all playing out in your life. And it's like, this is the great thing. When we clear a belief in one area of life, it can just create a domino effect onto every other area without us having to like do the nitty gritty picking into everything.
That's right. Yeah, it is all the same thing. You hear a lot of people who've read a lot of self-help books, they'll say it's all a regurgitation. And to be honest with you, yes, it is. It is. It's all a rehash of old ideas because this one idea works, because we're all the same, aren't we? But it's having that self-awareness, and also it's great that there are so many books out there saying the same things using different words because that repetition helps build that emotional awareness. That's how I think anyway. And
Yeah.
yeah, so the beliefs are a massive part of any form of personal growth, in my opinion. And that's why my business is called Be the Limitless You, because first you have to be aware that you are limitless. Secondly, you've got to be limitless, before you can do something, you first must be something. So the be, we're human beings, right? So the be is human being, beliefs, behaviors, we've got to be these things. Most people just want to do, but
Mm,
we're not human doings, we're human beings. So again, what you're saying with the relationships, it sounds that's exactly what you're doing. You're getting your clients to be who they truly are.
mm, absolutely. And I think, sorry, I lost my train of thought there because there was so many things that you were saying that I was agreeing with. I was like, oh yes, I want to say this. I was getting excited there. But yeah, it is exactly that. Oh, one of the things what I wanted to say is the conditioned way of being is to think that we have to do in order to receive. So I feel a lot of people come and they create their soul aligned businesses, but then they almost like put themselves in this little prison and create this like 9 to 5 job around the business that they created for freedom. And they think they have to do. I did this myself. It was like, oh my goodness, I created this for freedom. And then all of a sudden, like, I'm like thinking that I need to still get up at a certain time, have this structure in place. And yes, the masculine structure is so important that we have that so the feminine can feel safe to flow. But it's like, how are we doing things? Because a lot of us are being called to do things in a different way, to do things in alignment with our soul, which doesn't mean the doing, the being piece. It's like the being that we are gets to receive because we're inherently worthy of receiving, not because of the productivity that we put into something. And it's like any time that we're working with, oh, this was the other thing that I was going to say. like you were saying there's so many books. So a lot of people can come and kind of go, well, the books are wrote. And there's so many people doing that. There's so many people coaching, or there's so many people doing the spirituality. And it's all, again, limitations on what we're not choosing to step into ourselves. It's not that there's so many people doing it. Well, it is that there's so many people doing it, but our brain, because it's wired to focus on what's important to us, we're going to see people doing the things that we want to do as well. So it's important to be aware of that. We think that everyone's doing the personal development work, everyone's doing the healing. Not everyone is, and there's room and there's spaciousness for everybody to do it. But what I typically find, and I know for me, when I work with a mentor or a coach, sometimes they will say something that I've heard over and over again, but it isn't until that moment when that person says it to me that it lands within my body. I've had clients say the same thing to me, that they're literally like, oh my God, I've heard the same thing over and over again, but until you said it, I did not understand it. And that's why it's so important for us that even though it may sound like a regurgitation of the same thing, it's true. This is how the universe is working.
Yeah, that's right. Because it's again, but that comes down to awareness, doesn't it? Knowing who you are.
Yeah,
So that's what the title of my book is, Who the Hell Are You? Because most of us
love
don't
it.
really know ourselves, you know. Um, I got that
I love
title
that.
because I read a line that went, it's never too late to be who you really are. And at that time, I just found a few limiting beliefs I didn't know I had. I moved them, my life had improved. I thought, how many more have I got of these? And then it was like, who the hell am I? Do you know what I mean? I don't even know myself.
I
And
love that.
so I did a lot of it, and I thought, oh, yeah, a lot of people have got, this sort of issue as well. They may not be aware of it straight away, but they might find themselves in their whatever age, trapped in a job they're really good at, but it's not feeding their soul. It's the wrong energy. They're great at it because they've done well, but they've sought their identity into a lot of these organizations rather than stepping into their own identity. And yeah, so that's why the title of my book is that.
I
Um,
love it. It's so good and it's so needed because I think people get so caught up in people's opinions of we get caught up in our people's opinions, other people's opinions of us, but it's like we don't even know who we are. And like I've been on this journey for I don't know how many years now, about 7 years, but I still uncover pieces and parts of myself. So I think like it's amazing. It's like, of course, like who the hell are you? It's like constantly, I'm sure you could pick that book up at any stage of your life and like rediscover who you are in that moment in time.
yeah, of course. And just going back to the repetition there, like you said, you could read a book. Let's say I read books 5 years ago, but I just keep moving on to the next book. I didn't wasn't aware that it was the repetition that helps you, you know, make these ideas land in your body, as you say. So now I will read that book, over and over again sometimes, and I'll often reread books from 5 years ago and go, God, I understand this now. Do you know what I mean? It's like what I think Bob Proctor says it very well. He says something like, when you read a good book through the second time, you don't see something that wasn't there before. You see something in yourself that wasn't there before. And I
Mm.
just think that's so important. But then again, a lot of people are not aware of this repetition because the school system teaches us to read the book, get graded by your memory on the book, and let's move on to the next book. It's great to win an A star in an exam or win a quiz, but in order to get what you want out of life without violating the rights of others, it's not so effective. So, repetition, is that something that you do with your clients as well?
I think it's about I agree with everything you said there about the books and like picking up another book because I feel like when I read a book a year, 2 years down the line, it's like I'm reading it from a different level of consciousness. So it's landing within me in a completely different way. It's like I didn't get it that time, even though I may have gotten so much from the book in that time. But with the repetition, it's kind of like for me, it's about consistency in me showing up for me. Sometimes I believe at the start of somebody's journey, it's important to be repetitive. So starting a meditation practice, starting a journaling practice. But when we go deeper into this work, It's less about being so restrictive on what we do, and it's more about what does my body need from me right now. So I will typically do practices every morning, but every morning could look very different because I'm feeling very different. So it's not really about repeating something over and over again because we evolve and we move beyond it. But I do believe in going back and actually looking at something again. Because I have people that do my courses again and again. They're like, oh my God, or they would even listen to a recording of a reading with me and they're like, I heard it in a completely different way. So I feel like sometimes we can think, like you said, you get graded on a paper, it's done, done and dusted. And it's like, that's not what this life really is about. It's about being able to consciously come into something, go through your body and actually see what does my body need from me right now. There will be a phase where repetition is key, but it's like, can you trust yourself to go to where you're being led? And I learned that I don't know if you're familiar with human design.
I've heard a little bit about it.
Yeah.
I had a
I'm
friend
by,
heavily into it, so
oh, really?
she told me a few things.
Yeah. I don't know a huge amount about it, but so I won't pretend I'm an expert at all, but I'm a manifesting generator. And one of the biggest things that I learned, which was so amazing, was go with my sacral hits. And if I'm reading a book and or doing a course, we're taught if we're lazy if we don't complete something. You have to finish it out. You can't quit. That's been lazy. But for manifesting generators, it's like trust your intuition that if it says put down the book, if you don't feel lit up by that book anymore, put it down. And when I heard this changed everything for me because then in a month's time, a year's time, I might get a hit to pick up that exact same book and I'll pick it up where the bookmark is, and it will be the exact thing that I need to hear in that moment. So it's about trusting your alignment and when you get the call to go do something.
Yeah, so again, that's if you weren't aware of that and you put that book down, maybe you start telling yourself the story, I'm not disciplined. I'm unable to finish books. I'm not able to do this. But when you're self-aware, no, actually, no, it's because of this, then you're being kinder to yourself again, right? And you're getting better ideas that are landing in your body and landing in your subconscious mind.
Mm.
So
Yeah, sorry.
that's okay. Yeah, that's okay. I was going to let you carry on.
No, but I think as you say, the awareness thing, it's so important that we're aware of like our conditioning from schooling, from religions, from our parents or caregivers, not to throw shade or shame at any of those things. We were brought up how we were brought up, but it's like now you're the adult now. You can actually have that magnifying glass on everything and look at it and see, do I want this to be my truth? It can be if you're happy with it, but if you're not happy with believing something about yourself or believing something about this world, you can change it and you have the power to change it. So, yes, it starts with the awareness first, and then actually trusting yourself that when you're called to do something or go someplace, because this was huge for me, I really didn't trust myself, particularly after coming out of that relationship. It was kind of like I completely didn't trust myself anymore because I stayed for way too long. So it's like the damage that we do when we keep doing something that isn't serving us. And it's like when I was getting hits of inspiration to do things, it was like, oh, can I do this? Is it safe to do it? This is going against the norm. Like I should be in my 9 to 5. I should be going down this trajectory of life. But it's when I started making those decisions from pure blind faith, from my intuition, that's when things were really changing for me, and it was allowing me to build trust within myself, which is so huge in order for us to step into any sort of level of fulfillment, to not go outside of ourselves to look for the answer, to go within.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I see one of the biggest problems that most people have this underlying belief that they're not good enough to make the kind of bold decisions and take the brave actions that bring them face to face with the best possible life for them. I feel that a lot of us question our self-worth, because of that. And therefore, we end up leading lives far less than our potential, could actually give us if we had the self-awareness and the self-assurance to know that all the answers are inside of us and it's just a matter of drawing it out. Again, we've been conditioned by school to fill ourselves up with education, like but actually we're already full. We just got to work out how to get out of the way and let it come through and express ourselves, you know? So I think that is quite a good place to end this. So thank you so much. It's been absolutely fantastic. Before you go, where can we find you? How can people work with you? We'll put
Thanks so
all your
much,
link,
Anne.
we will put all your links in the description, but tell us.
Perfect. Thanks so much. I've loved this conversation. Um, you can find me, I mostly hang out on Instagram, and that is CherylByrne555 dot com. I was going to say my website is CherylByrne555.com. So that's where I am. Under any of the main profiles, it's CherylByrne555.
Okay, that's absolutely brilliant. All of the links will be in the description. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thanks so much.